At 3 o'clock in the morning, my CEO wife Chloe came home. The first thing she did was demand a divorce, throwing $2 million at me and telling me to get lost. No warm-up, no small talk, just straight savage. Without a moment's hesitation, I signed the divorce papers and walked out. Later, my ex-wife called, asking if I was done with my little tantrum, telling me to hurry back once I was finished. I was in the middle of kissing Maya Reed, trying to muffle her breathless gasps as I answered, my voice raspy as hell. "Aren't you with Julian Vance now? I don't take sloppy seconds." Through the rowdy shouts of "all in" from the poker game in the background, the other end of the line went silent for a beat before the room erupted in chaos. "Chloe, I think you really messed up this time. We told you to just smooth things over with him." Chloe cleared her throat. "Find somewhere quiet. We need to discuss this family matter." She emphasized the words family matter, and I knew she was furious. I ignored her and hung up. The next second, she started calling me again and again, a relentless barrage like she'd lost her damn mind. I calmly switched my phone to airplane mode so she couldn't bother me anymore. No one knew I had been reborn. In my previous life, I died in a hospital bed. It was only on my deathbed that I learned my wife and her first love had been entangled for 50 long years. Her 20 days of business trips each month? Yeah, she was traveling the world with him. Her entire family knew. I was the only clown kept in the dark. The reason she never married her first love was that she couldn't bear to see him tied down by domestic life. She wanted him to shine brilliantly in his field, while I was only fit to be a stay-at-home husband, stuck in the boring, mundane grind. The day I died, everyone said I was petty and that I deserved to die from the anger. After being reborn, I immediately rushed to the airport. JFK was packed with people. I pushed through the crowd, breathless, until I finally spotted the 3 familiar figures at the boarding gate. Chloe stood out in her designer suit, her cool demeanor making her impossible to miss. Our 5-year-old daughter, Lily, wore a little white dress, a perfect miniature of her mother. And Julian Vance, in a perfectly tailored suit, stood beside them, looking for all the world like they were a happy little family. My voice echoed through the terminal. "Chloe!" All 3 of them turned to look at me. Chloe's brow furrowed. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" My eyes locked onto Julian. "Who is he? Where are you all going?" Julian quickly stepped forward. "Mr. Hayes, you've misunderstood. Chloe and I are just friends meeting up for a family trip. Her parents are here with us." Chloe frowned, pulling Julian behind her protectively as she glared at me. "How did you find out? Did you come all the way here just to cause a scene?" My 5-year-old daughter, Lily, shoved me. "Daddy, don't ruin our family trip. You don't get it. You belong at home." A chill ran through me. If it's a family trip, why wasn't I invited? I'm your father and I'm your mother's husband. If I don't belong, does he? People around us started staring. Julian looked mortified, which only made Chloe and Lily's hearts ache for him. They both glared at me. "Making a scene like this in public? Aren't you embarrassed? This is exactly why we didn't want to bring you. You're not fit to be seen with us." Lily looked at me with pure disgust. "Uncle Julian is handsomer, more talented, and just better than you in every single way. It's pathetic to have a father like you." Every word hit like a knife twisting in my gut. In my past life, I was a tireless servant to the Sterling family. I was up before dawn laying out Chloe's outfits and stayed up late checking Lily's homework. If Chloe's parents had so much as a headache, I was at their bedside with tea and medicine like some unpaid nurse. For 50 years, I ran myself ragged for that family, aging way before my time. But in the end, to all of them, I was nothing more than a male nanny, an expendable convenience. Seeing the scene spiraling, Julian quickly bought another ticket on his phone. "Mr. Hayes, please come with us to Aspen. I'm so sorry. We were wrong to exclude you." His apology only made Chloe and Lily more convinced that I was the one being unreasonable. On the plane, Chloe and Lily doted on Julian the entire flight. Even the flight attendant thought they were a family. I sat a row behind them, staring out at the clouds, remembering Chloe's words from my last life. I couldn't bear to see him trapped in a kitchen. I wanted him to be free to shine. How utterly laughable. I had sacrificed everything to become a despised stay-at-home husband while Julian got to live his dream. When we arrived in Aspen, Chloe's parents' faces fell the moment they saw me. What is he doing here? For the entire 3-day trip, I was completely invisible. They all fawned over Julian, praising his charm, his generosity, his thoughtfulness. I just stood in the corner like a ghost, watching them enjoy their perfect family moment. When it was time for a group photo, I moved closer, not wanting to be left out, but Lily shoved the camera into my hands. You don't fit in with us. You can take the picture. Numbly, I raised the camera. Through the lens, I saw Chloe linking her arm with Julian, Lily leaning affectionately against him, and Chloe's parents beaming with adoration. It was the exact same image as the photograph that had literally been the death of me in my last life. As the shutter clicked, my hands trembled so violently I almost dropped the camera. On the way down the mountain, their 3 cars were perfectly full. Chloe got into her car without a backward glance. "Find your own way back," she said, not even looking at me. I was left to walk alone down the winding mountain road, the blazing sun making my head spin. My legs were so swollen I could barely walk, and I had to drag my exhausted body onto the last flight home. When I finally arrived, there was no word of concern, not an ounce of guilt, just orders. Chloe tossed her designer's suit on the floor in front of me. "Iron this and then pick up the toys." Lily kicked a pile of toys toward my feet. In that instant, the pain and rage from 2 lifetimes finally boiled over. "Chloe, let's get a divorce." My voice was quiet, but it landed like a thunderclap in the silent living room. Chloe and Lily froze, their identical, beautiful faces filled with disbelief. Chloe's voice was ice. "Do you have any idea what you're saying?" I lifted my head and met her gaze. "I know exactly what I'm saying. I want a divorce." Thinking I was bluffing, they smirked and called their lawyer. Lily stared at me, her young face a mask of cold indifference. "Regretting it now? It's not too late. Apologize right now, and Mom and I will pretend this never happened." But I just smiled, picked up the pen, and without a single hesitation signed my name on the divorce papers. This life, I was done with them. Chloe and Lily's eyes widened in shock. Clearly, they never imagined I would actually go through with it. I turned to the lawyer. "How long is the mandatory cooling-off period?" He adjusted his glasses. 30 days. You can withdraw the petition at any time during that period if you change your mind." Hearing this, both Chloe and Lily visibly relaxed. They exchanged a look, their usual condescending expressions returning. Lily crossed her arms, her voice dripping with malice. "So, you were just bluffing? Well, Daddy, you'd better actually be gone in 30 days. Don't come crawling back, begging Mom to take you back. That would be pathetic." My heart clenched like an invisible fist had crushed it. This was my daughter looking at me like I was her enemy. "Don't you worry," I heard myself say, my voice steady. "The second that period is over and the papers are finalized, I'm gone. I won't stay a second longer." Chloe sneered. "Quite the performance." She stepped closer, her faint cedar perfume, the one I used to find intoxicating, filling the air. "Let's see if you're still this tough in 30 days. I took a breath to respond, but the sharp ring of a cell phone cut me off. Chloe glanced at the caller ID, and the corners of her mouth lifted into a soft smile. It was Julian. "Julian, what's wrong?" His voice sounded weak. "Chloe, I'm not feeling very well." Lily jumped to her feet. "What's wrong?" "I'm coming right over." Her face was full of concern, like she'd flipped a switch. "No, it's fine," Julian said. "You two are busy." But Chloe was already grabbing her coat, heading for the door without even looking at me. "We're on our way. Wait for me." After hanging up, the 2 of them rushed out. Lily paused at the threshold and made a face at me. "I'm going to see Uncle Julian. He's 1,000,000 times better than you." Then the door slammed shut. I stood there, feeling the blood drain from my face. Mechanically, I put away my copy of the divorce petition, went upstairs, and started packing. The closet was filled with dresses and coats I'd bought for Chloe, each one chosen with care. The bookshelves were lined with picture books and educational toys I'd picked out for Lily. In my last life, my entire world revolved around them, and I completely lost myself. This time, I was changing everything. No more playing house like a fool. The next day, I went to the most expensive salon in Manhattan. When the stylist asked what I wanted, I looked at my own haggard reflection and said quietly, "Cut it all off. I'm starting over." 3 hours later, I walked out with a sharp, short haircut, dyed a bold blonde. Next, I went to a department store and tried on all the clothes I'd never dared to wear as a stay-at-home husband. I ended up buying a light blue windbreaker and black cargo pants. Standing in front of the full-length mirror, I barely recognized myself. The man looking back was young and vibrant, with no trace of the domestic drudge I had been. That evening, I walked into a Michelin-starred restaurant. As the host was leading me to a table, I froze. There, at a window seat, sat Chloe, Lily, and Julian, laughing and talking together like everything was perfect. The host followed my gaze. "Such a happy-looking family, aren't they? The lady brings her husband and daughter here regularly. The two of them just adore him." It was honestly kinda sweet to see. Then boom, a sharp pain shot straight through my chest. I was just about to ask for a table way far from them when Julian spotted me. His eyes went wide, totally shook by my new look. Chloe and Lily were stunned too. They had never seen me like this before. The stylish clothes, the sharp haircut, I was radiating a confidence they'd never seen on me. After her initial shock, Lily's face hardened. "What are you doing here? I thought you were divorcing Mom. Are you stalking us?" I gripped my phone, my nails digging into my palm. "Getting a divorce doesn't mean I can't eat out. And I'm not following you. It's a coincidence." I turned to leave, but Julian grabbed my wrist. "Don't go, Ethan. Since you're here, why don't you join us? Although we've already ordered all my favorites," he said, shooting Chloe an apologetic look. "Chloe, why don't you order something Mr. Hayes likes?" Chloe frowned, her hand freezing over the menu. She looked up at me, brow furrowed. "What do you like to eat?" I almost laughed out loud. I had taught myself to cook from scratch just to make them healthy meals. I had scoured cookbooks for new recipes to tempt Lily's picky palate. I brewed special broths every single day for Chloe's sensitive stomach. And after 5 years of marriage, they had no clue what I liked to eat. Not a single clue. Lily cut in. "Uncle Julian, don't worry about him. Your steak is getting cold." I picked up the menu. "I'll order for myself." I ordered the foie gras and the beef bourguignon. Expensive dishes I loved but had never allowed myself to order. Both mother and daughter stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Lily couldn't help herself. "Dad, where did you get the money for that?" I answered calmly, "Don't forget, I'm still legally part of the Sterling family. Half of that billion-dollar fortune is technically mine. I used to focus everything on you and your mother, and all the money went to you. Now I'd like to treat myself for a change." Chloe's frown deepened. "What exactly are you playing at?" I met her gaze. "I'm eating dinner. And then, when the 30-day period is over, I'm leaving your lives for good." Right after I finished speaking, a waiter approached with a tureen of soup. He slipped just as he reached our table, sending the entire pot of scalding liquid flying toward us. In a split second, Chloe threw herself in front of Julian to shield him. I had no one. The boiling soup splashed all over my arm and chest. The searing pain hit instantly, and a cry escaped my lips. Before I could even process it, Lily ran over, crying, and shoved me hard to the floor. "Move. Get out of the way." I hit the ground hard, my elbow cracking against the tile, scraping open the blisters already forming and drawing blood. Lily didn't even glance at me as she threw herself at Julian, sobbing hysterically. "Uncle Julian, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Her little hands trembled, reaching for him but too scared to touch. Chloe stared at Julian, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Are you burned? Let me see." They hovered over him, dabbing at his skin with napkins like he was made of glass. Meanwhile, the skin on my arm and chest was already blistering and raw, but neither of them even bothered to look at me. Suddenly, Lily whipped her head around and glared at me with pure hatred. This is all your fault. You're a jinx. If you hadn't stalked us, Uncle Julian wouldn't have had to move over for you, and then he wouldn't have gotten hurt. Chloe shot me a cold look like I was some kind of criminal. Are you happy now? As they helped Julian out of the restaurant, Lily turned back to scream at me. I wish he would just disappear forever. The other diners were pointing and whispering. Someone handed me a napkin. That poor man, I heard someone mutter. I pushed myself up using the table. The blisters on my arm were swollen and shiny, but I couldn't even feel the pain anymore. I took a cab to the hospital alone. After examining the burns, the doctor frowned. There's some infection. You'll need to be admitted for a few days for observation. I calmly filled out the paperwork. During my hospital stay, it was like Chloe and Lily had straight up vanished. Not a single call. Not one text. Not even a half-hearted, "Are you alive?" Lily scoffed. He loves Mom and me too much. His whole life is about us. He couldn't survive without us. Julian sighed. But maybe he's really hurt this time. Shouldn't you go talk to him? Chloe's certainty was chilling. Don't bother. Just give him a few days to cool off. It's the same every time. He's always the one who comes back and apologizes in the end. Standing outside that door, I dug my nails so deep into my palms they almost bled. So that's what they thought. Every compromise. Every concession. Every time I swallowed my pride to keep the peace. To them, it was just some pathetic little game. But not this time. Never again. On my way back to my room, I ran into Julian in the hall. He looked surprised for a second, then gave me a warm smile. Mr. Hayes, Chloe, and Lily went to get me some lunch. Do you have a minute? I'd like to talk. I looked at him, suddenly curious what he could possibly want. We went down to the hospital garden. The sun was bright. Julian stared at a big leafy tree, his voice full of nostalgia. Chloe and I knew each other in college. I remember one time she ran all over New York City just to find a pair of sneakers for me in a size 13. When I had a fever, she stayed by my side for 3 days and nights. Once I casually mentioned a French restaurant on the Upper West Side I wanted to try but said it was too far, so she bought the restaurant and kept the chef on retainer just for me. I listened in silence, my heart twisting. It wasn't that Chloe didn't know how to love someone. She just didn't love me. In my past life, after 50 years together, she still couldn't remember my birthday. Yet Julian gets a tiny burn and she acts like the sky is falling. But then I moved abroad and we lost touch, Julian continued. We've only recently reconnected. He saw the look on my face and a flicker of triumph flashed in his eyes. But don't worry, we're just old friends catching up. You shouldn't get the wrong idea. I steadied myself and met his gaze. I'm not misunderstanding anything. And since I've already filed for divorce, whether you two eat together, travel together, or get married and start a family, it has nothing to do with me. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Mr. Hayes, you've really got it all wrong. Just let me explain. Before he could finish, he slipped, falling backward and dragging me down with him into the decorative pond. The icy water closed over my head. I can't swim. Panic hit me hard. I thrashed wildly as water flooded my nose and lungs, choking me. Through my blurry, water-filled vision, I saw Chloe running toward us. She jumped into the pond without hesitation and pulled Julian out. Lily was right there with a tissue, dabbing at his face, not even sparing me a single glance as I struggled in the water. Uncle Julian, are you okay? Help me, I choked out, fingers clawing at the slippery edge. Chloe shot me a look full of disgust. You pushed him in on purpose. I was shaking trying to deny it, but Lily cut me off. I saw him. He did it. Leave him there. He deserves it. A bystander stepped forward to help, but Lily actually held out her arm to block them. Don't help him. He's my dad. He deserves it. My heart went completely cold. The water closed over my head one last time, and as everything went dark, I felt my consciousness slipping away. When I woke up, I was alone in the hospital room. I slowly sat up, picked up my phone, and booked a one-way flight. When the airline called to confirm, I answered calmly, yes, that's correct. A flight to San Francisco in 7 days. I had barely hung up when the door opened. Chloe and Lily stood there staring at me. Where do you think you're going now? I looked at them calmly. The divorce will be final soon. I'm leaving the city to start a new life. They exchanged a look of disbelief. Lily frowned impatiently. Dad, stop acting. You're just doing all this for attention, aren't you? Chloe's voice was icy. This has gone far enough. I didn't even have the energy to argue. Believe what you want. They clearly didn't. Chloe's tone turned imperious. Go and apologize to Julian. I looked up at her. I did nothing wrong. Why should I apologize? Her eyes went cold. You nearly drowned him and you still feel no remorse. I started to laugh. A bitter, broken sound that made my eyes sting. Will you two ever, for once, not take his side? Do my feelings mean absolutely nothing to you? Lily didn't hesitate. Of course, Uncle Julian is worldly and charming and fun. How can a boring stay-at-home dad like you even compare? Her young face was twisted with contempt. No matter what happens, it's always your fault, Chloe added, voice dripping with disdain. You're paranoid and disrespectful to Julian. You make mistakes and refuse to admit them. You have no class. She shot me a look of disgust. A father like you is a terrible influence. With that, she grabbed Lily's hand and walked out. Just before the door closed, Lily glared back at me. You'd better go apologize right now. The door slammed shut. I sat on the edge of the bed, a crushing weight on my chest making it hard to breathe. But this time, I wasn't sad. I looked out the window at the bright sunshine and smiled. If they loved Julian so much, then he could be Chloe's husband and Lily's father. As for me, I was done. Done giving them any part of myself. I stayed a few more days in the hospital. My burns started to heal. No one came to visit. I didn't care anymore. The day I was discharged happened to be my birthday. I stood at the hospital entrance, letting the warm sun hit my face. I suddenly remembered my past life. How for 50 years I had hoped they would remember my birthday just once. I'd prepare elaborate dinners only for them to come home late, or not at all. Even when I called and begged them to come home, they'd just pick at their food, never even bothering to say the words, "Happy birthday." Reborn, I didn't have any of those expectations anymore. I went to a bakery and grabbed a small cupcake for myself. Stuck a single candle in it. Back in the empty house, I shut my eyes and made a wish. This life? It was going to be mine. The second I blew out the candle, the front door flew open. Chloe's assistant stood there with that polite, corporate smile plastered on her face. "Mr. Hayes, Miss Sterling sent me to pick you up." I frowned. "Pick me up for what?" Her smile didn't crack. "It's your birthday, sir. Miss Sterling and Miss Lily have a surprise for you." I stared at her, then let out a cold little laugh. "You've got the wrong guy." Her tone turned firm. "No mistake, sir. Is May 20th your birthday?" Miss Sterling was very specific. The whole thing felt insane. How the hell would Chloe remember my birthday? But the assistant wouldn't budge. She even took my arm to help me up. "The car is waiting, sir. We shouldn't keep Miss Sterling waiting." Next thing I knew, she was basically escorting me into the car. We pulled up to the ballroom of a luxury hotel. The second I stepped inside, I froze. The entire hall was ridiculously decked out, crystal chandeliers throwing glittering light everywhere. On one wall, a family portrait Lily had hand-drawn of the three of us was projected. A gorgeous two-tiered cake with 28 candles sat on a central table. As soon as I walked in, guests swarmed me, all smiles and hype. "Happy birthday, Ethan. Chloe and Lily really went all out. You're one lucky man." I just stood there like I was dreaming. "Where are Chloe and Lily?" The assistant smiled smoothly. "They'll be here any moment. In the meantime, please open your gift." She handed me a beautifully wrapped box. The crowd started chanting for me to open it. After a brief hesitation, I lifted the lid. Inside, a diamond watch rested on velvet, the main stone blazing under the lights. Someone gasped. "My God, isn't that the Starfall diamond from the Sabis auction last month? I heard it went for 8 figures. Chloe must adore you. No wonder he gave up his career for her. I would too." Whispers of envy filled the room. The assistant fastened the watch on my wrist. "How does it feel, sir?" I stood there stunned, the cold diamonds kissing my skin. Was this real? For a split second, I almost bought into it. Then the ballroom doors slammed open. Chloe's voice sliced through the air. "Who gave you permission to wear that watch?" I turned. Chloe, Lily, and Julian stood in the doorway, faces dark. Lily rushed over and yanked the watch off my wrist. The clasp dug into my skin, drawing blood. I grabbed my bleeding wrist, pain snapping me back to earth. My voice shook. "What is this? What kind of sick game are you playing?" Lily glared at me like I was dirt. "I should be asking you that. This is the birthday party Mom and I planned for Uncle Julian. What are you doing here?" I went still. The room fell dead quiet. Chloe's voice was flat as ice. "Today is Julian's birthday. This party is for him." I started laughing. So yeah, the assistant messed up. This was never for me. Of course not. Who would have guessed Julian and I shared the same birthday? And obviously they picked his. The guests' faces shifted from envy to straight-up pity. "How awkward," someone whispered. I took a breath and turned to leave. "Ethan, wait," Julian called. "Since it's such a coincidence, why not stay and celebrate with us?" "No, thanks," I said without looking back. Julian put on a hurt little act and looked at Chloe. "Did I offend your husband? He really doesn't seem to like me." Chloe stepped in front of me, blocking my way. "Julian was kind enough to invite you. Drop the attitude." Lily grabbed my arm. "Yeah, weren't you always whining that we never celebrate your birthday? What's your problem now?" I looked at them, the absurdity hitting hard. I let out a bitter chuckle. "Me whining? When?" Chloe frowned. "Stop being dramatic and stay." It wasn't a request. It was an order. I closed my eyes. Under the judging stares of the entire room, I stayed. I sat in a corner while Chloe and Lily gave Julian his cake and gifts, smiling at him like he hung the damn moon. I was invisible. When it was time to cut the cake, Julian came over and slung an arm around me. "Ethan, let's cut it together." He grabbed my hand to guide it to the knife. His grip tightened when I tried to pull away. Then someone bumped into the champagne tower. Glasses crashed everywhere. Chloe instantly shielded Julian. I got showered with shards. I hit the floor, blood running from a cut on my forehead, blurring everything. The last thing I saw before blacking out was Chloe and Lily frantically checking Julian for injuries while I lay there bleeding like I didn't matter. I woke up in the hospital again, my forehead throbbing. Chloe and Lily stood by my bed, faces cold. Chloe's voice was low and accusing. "Did you do that on purpose?" It took me a second. They thought I ruined Julian's party intentionally. A dry smile tugged at my lips. My voice was hoarse. "I've barely met the guy. How would I even know it was his birthday, let alone plan to sabotage it?" Chloe didn't look convinced. Her assistant stepped in quickly. "Miss Sterling, it was my fault. I got the date wrong and picked up Mr. Hayes by mistake." They accepted it, barely. Lily still shot me a glare. "Next time, stay out of our way. Don't ruin another surprise for Uncle Julian." They left without another word. I watched them go. There would be no next time. After I got out of the hospital, I went back home and completely checked out. Chloe couldn't find a file. Lily threw a fit over cake. I just told them to ask the housekeeper, not even looking up. For the first time, they were the ones being ignored. And they had no clue how to handle it. Chloe would frown at me like she wanted to say something, then just walk off. Lily, boiling with frustration, would break stuff in front of me on purpose. I didn't react. Not a blink. The house felt like a freezer, but I didn't care. I was just counting down the days. One night, Lily demanded to see a meteor shower. "Take me to see the meteors." "Right now," she ordered, tugging my sleeve like a tiny dictator. I gently pulled my arm free, eyes on my book. "No." She puffed her cheeks. "If you won't take me, I'll ask Uncle Julian to." I flipped a page. "Suit yourself." Hours later, my phone rang. Chloe's name glowed on the screen. "Get to the hospital. Now." Her voice was ice. I checked the clock. 2:15 a.m. "If you don't come," she said, "you'll regret it." Then she hung up. After a moment, I went. I didn't want drama before the divorce was finalized. The hospital lights were blinding. I opened the door. Lily lay in bed, leg in a cast, face scraped up. "Bad daddy. This is all your fault," she screamed the second she saw me. I froze. Chloe grabbed my wrist so hard I thought it'd snap. "What kind of father are you? Taking her into the woods at night, and the moment you see a snake, you run and leave her alone." Her voice trembled with rage. "Do you have any idea she could have died?" I stared at Lily. "You told her I took you?" Her eyes darted away as she cried harder. "Who else would it be? It was you. This is your fault." Cold dread crept through me. "Lily, don't lie. It was Julian who took you." Chloe cut me off with a snarl. "Enough. You endanger your daughter and now you're blaming Julian?" Her eyes were full of disgust. "He would never do something so malicious." She gestured to the bodyguards. "Take him. Lock him in the basement. No food for 3 days." As they dragged me out, I looked back. I was smiling. A weird, twisted smile, half freedom, half heartbreak. Chloe looked uneasy. Lily just gripped her mother's coat. Neither said a word. They locked me in a pitch-black storage room. The heat was cranked all the way up. I sat in the corner, shirt soaked with sweat. In the dark, I heard things skittering around. Terror washed over me, but I was too drained to scream. This was my punishment. From the wife I loved. From the daughter I adored. 3 days later, they let me out. I looked like hell, gaunt, pale, lips cracked and bleeding. From the living room, I heard piano music. Julian was teaching Lily, "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." She sat obediently, focused. No trace of the cruelty she showed me. Chloe stood by the window, sunlight framing her, watching them with a soft smile I'd never received. The whole scene felt like a joke. I tried so damn hard to belong. But I was always the outsider. Now I was ready to step aside. On the final day of the 30-day cooling-off period, I woke up early. Made myself a real breakfast, perfectly fried egg, crispy toast, warm milk. Lily shuffled in. "That smells good. I want some." I set my fork down slowly. "There's none left." She pouted. "Then make it for me tomorrow." My voice was quiet, but final. "There won't be a tomorrow." She stared at me, stunned, then dropped to the floor screaming. "You can't do that. You're a bad daddy." Chloe rushed in at the sound of her screaming. Her brow furrowed and she shot me that look. "Seriously? You really gonna argue with a kid?" She looked down her nose at me. "You're her father. Don't you think you're being cruel?" I held her gaze, calm and steady. "I'm just stating a fact. How is that cruel?" Something in my eyes must have hit different, because Chloe actually looked startled. Before she could clap back, Lily was already tugging her toward the door. "Mommy, let's go find Uncle Julian. He can do anything. He's way better than Daddy." They grabbed the car keys, and that's when I finally spoke. "Today's the last day. Aren't you coming with me to finalize the divorce?" Lily drowned me out with her whining. "Mommy, let's go." Right then, as if on cue, Julian called. "Chloe." Lily mentioned she wanted tiramisu, so I just learned how to make some. "Do you two want to come over and try it?" Chloe's whole face softened like butter. "We'll be right there." She didn't even glance at me. Not once. Just took Lily's hand and walked out. When the door shut, I let out a bitter laugh. Guess I'd be finalizing this solo. At the county clerk's office, the official handed me the papers. "Your wife isn't here." I smiled lightly. "She's busy." Back at the house, I placed her copy of the finalized divorce decree on the coffee table. Then I picked up the suitcase I'd packed weeks ago and without looking back, walked out of the house I'd lived in for 10 years. On the way to the airport, I watched the city blur past the window and thought about my deathbed in my last life. I was dying, and Chloe and Lily were fussing over Julian, not even sparing me a final glance. This time, I was done. I wouldn't be anyone's husband, anyone's father. I'd just be me. When Chloe came back that evening, it was already dark. The living room was dead silent. No smell of dinner cooking. No Ethan waiting at the door like clockwork. She tossed her coat onto the sofa. Ethan. Nothing. Her frown deepened. She strode into the kitchen. Empty. Cold. Not even a glass of water left out for her. Where is he? She muttered, heading upstairs. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. She pushed it open, probably expecting to see me on the bed folding laundry like always. But the room was empty. The bed perfectly made. She walked to the half-open closet. My side was almost bare. Just a few old sweatpants hanging there like leftovers. Her heart sank, but irritation washed over it fast. What is he playing it now? She scoffed. She turned toward the study, then froze. On the coffee table sat a folder. The finalized divorce decree. And next to it, a single neat note. The 30 days are over. The divorce is final. We're done. Chloe's eyes widened. She snatched the folder and ripped it open. Black and white. My signature. The official court seal. I'd actually done it. Her fingers tightened around the papers until her knuckles turned white, crumpling the thick cardstock. She stared at the words, something heavy settling in her chest, making it hard to breathe. But then she forced herself to calm down, a sarcastic smile tugging at her lips. What an act. She tossed the papers back onto the table. He'll be back in 3 days. Crying and begging me to take him back. She walked toward the bathroom, but that weird, uneasy feeling? It wouldn't leave. The next morning, the silence shattered with Lily's wails. I don't want this. I want Daddy's eggs. She kicked over a dining chair. On her plate sat a burnt egg courtesy of Julian, blackened edges smelling straight up awful. Julian stood there helpless. It's Uncle's first time, sweetie. I'll do better next time. I promise. Lily grabbed the plate and hurled it to the floor. This is disgusting. I want Daddy. Where is he? The screaming gave Chloe a headache. She set down her coffee cup. Lily, that's enough. Lily flinched, but her frustration only made her more hysterical. Mommy, did Daddy leave us? Why isn't he coming back? Chloe's grip tightened on her mug. Coffee sloshed over the rim, staining her cuff. She stared at it. In the past, I'd have been there instantly with a napkin. Probably already laid out a fresh shirt for her. But now, no one moved. She frowned, annoyed, and said to Julian, just have the housekeeper make something. Julian spoke softly. Chloe, do you think Ethan is really not coming back? Maybe I should talk to him. Chloe sneered. Don't bother. He'll come crawling back. But even as she said it, her eyes drifted toward the staircase. Like she was waiting. Days passed, and the Sterling household turned into pure chaos. Chloe's clothes were wrinkled. No one checked Lily's homework. Her teacher started calling. The dining table, once full of home-cooked meals, was now covered in takeout containers. Julian tried to take over my duties, but he couldn't even figure out the washing machine. He shrank one of Chloe's couture blouses and dyed Lily's school uniform pink. He looked at Chloe helplessly. I'm really trying, Chloe. She looked at him and felt this overwhelming wave of irritation. When I was there, the house ran like clockwork. Every dress perfectly pressed. Lily's homework filled with my notes. I even remembered her parents' birthdays. But it was a mess. A few days later, Chloe finally snapped. She swept a pile of files off her desk and roared at her assistant, Find him. Find him and bring him back. The assistant stammered. Miss Sterling, you mean Mr. Hayes? Her eyes were dark and stormy. Who else would I mean? Tell him his little game is over and to come home. I'm done waiting for him to get over his tantrum. After the assistant scurried out, Chloe sank into her chair, pressing her fingers to her temples. For the first time, she considered the possibility that I wasn't coming back. And it was all her fault. After leaving New York, I rented a small apartment in San Francisco. Nothing fancy, but enough. This life would be mine. I finally decided to pursue my college passion, fashion design. The divorce settlement was more than enough to get started. I enrolled in the city's most prestigious continuing education program for design. In the studio, the only sound was my pencil scratching against paper. I was completely lost in sketching the drape of a skirt, not even noticing the charcoal smudges on my shirt. I stood to grab some paints and accidentally bumped into someone, spilling coffee all over my sketch. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," a soft voice said. I looked up into warm, apologetic eyes. She wore a simple gray sweater, still holding the now empty coffee cup. Dark liquid dripped off the table, spreading across my almost finished design. I reached for it instinctively, but my fingers met damp paper. She quickly grabbed napkins, blotting the stain. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't looking. Is this for an assignment?" I looked at the ruined sketch, heart sinking, and shook my head. "It's fine. I can redraw it." She looked genuinely remorseful. "Let me at least pay for the materials." Then her eyes landed on a part the coffee hadn't touched. "Wait," she said softly, peeling back the damp paper. "This construction is really unique. Is this your own design?" I was surprised. Most of my classmates had called it too conservative. "You can see that?" I asked. She smiled and pulled out a business card. I didn't introduce myself. "Marries, I'm the guest lecturer for today's class. As an apology, I can connect you with some great fabric suppliers, or help however I can." As I took the card, I noticed a small paint smudge on her hand. I couldn't believe it. I'd admired her work for years. "Thank you. I'd appreciate that." She smiled. "Call me anytime." Then she left. I didn't expect to see her again so soon. The very next day, during our first class critique, my updated menswear collection was projected onto the main screen. The head critic frowned. "The color palette is too muted. We need stronger visual impact." I gripped my pen, ready to defend myself, when a clear, familiar voice spoke from the back. "On the contrary, I find the use of color quite powerful." It was Maya. She pointed out specific details in my design, explaining her reasoning clearly. The panel murmured in agreement. The head critic awkwardly cleared his throat and ended up giving me the highest score in class. After class, Maya stopped me in the hall. "Your work is truly special, Ethan. I'm impressed." I could smell the faint scent of turpentine and oil paints as she spoke. We ended up standing by the window, my tablet out, talking about design for over an hour until the sun set and shadows stretched across the floor. As we were about to part, she said casually, "There's a special exhibit at Soma next week. I have an extra ticket if you're interested." I felt my ears warm up. A moment later, my phone buzzed. An iMessage from her. A link to the exhibit with a note. "Your designs remind me of the masters. Quiet but full of life. You're going to do great things." Outside, the first green buds were appearing on the trees. I read her message again and again, feeling like my life was finally beginning. Back in New York, Julian tried to win over Chloe and Lily by cooking, just like I used to. In the Sterling Mansion kitchen, he fumbled with an apron, awkwardly stir-frying ribs while reading a recipe on his phone, sweat dripping down his forehead. Lily swung her legs at the table. "Uncle Julian, Daddy used to put pineapple in his." Julian forced a smile. "Almost ready." The second he turned away, his face twisted with irritation. Predictably, he knocked over a bottle of soy sauce, dark liquid splashing into the pan. In a rush, he grabbed the nearest container of white powder and dumped it in. At dinner, Lily took one bite and made a face. "This is yucky. I don't want it. I want Daddy's cooking." She threw a huge tantrum until Julian, jaw clenched tight, scraped the entire meal into the trash. But later that night, Lily came down with a fever and started vomiting from food poisoning. The driver and housekeeper rushed her to the hospital, panicking like crazy. She lay curled up in the hospital bed, her forehead burning up, her tiny hands clutching the blanket like it was the only thing keeping her safe. The doctor pulled off his stethoscope, his tone dead serious. "It's acute gastroenteritis from food poisoning. You have to be extremely careful with what a child this young eats." Julian stood there pale, forcing a weak little smile. "I'm so sorry, doctor. It was my fault. I wasn't paying attention." Lily whimpered in her sleep, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Daddy, I want Daddy." Daddy's sweet and sour ribs never made my tummy hurt. Julian's smile froze, his nails digging hard into his palms. Right then, Chloe rushed in straight from a late meeting, looking exhausted and stressed out. She glanced from her sick daughter to Julian, her voice low. What happened? Julian's voice was barely a whisper. I was just trying to make her favorite sweet and sour ribs. I think I might have used the wrong ingredient. Chloe didn't respond. She walked over to the bed and placed her hand on Lily's forehead. The heat coming off her daughter's skin made her frown. She said quietly, "This never happened when Ethan was here." A flash of shame and anger crossed Julian's face before he quickly looked down. "I'm sorry, Chloe. I was just trying to help." Lately, Chloe had been coming home from business dinners at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. The house was always dark and dead silent. No light left on for her. No hangover remedy sitting on the counter. Standing in the foyer one night, she could have sworn she saw me walking out of the kitchen with a glass of warm water, saying softly, "You're home." But the vision disappeared. Julian showed up at the top of the stairs in his pajamas. "Chloe, have you been drinking? Get me a glass of water," she said. He rushed into the kitchen and came back a moment later with a glass of ice water, condensation dripping off his fingers. Chloe took the glass, frowning at the icy touch. "Why is it cold?" Julian looked flustered. "Oh, I forgot to heat it up." Chloe suddenly remembered how there used to always be a glass of warm water waiting for her on the nightstand, no matter how late she got home. If she'd had too much to drink, I'd bring her a remedy, and her clothes for the next day would be steamed and hanging on the back of the bathroom door. She didn't say a word, just turned and walked into her study. Sitting at her desk, she stared at the ice cubes clinking in her glass, a strange tightness gripping her chest. Back then, I would have had all her files organized and ready to go. Now she looked at the chaotic mess covering her desk, rubbed her temples, and felt irritation bubbling up. The next morning, she found Julian in her study, organizing, after misplacing all of her most important documents. That was it, she lost her temper. "Can't you do anything right?" Julian stood in the doorway, his face pale as paper. "I was just trying to help. I saw how Ethan used to." Chloe cut him off with a sarcastic laugh. "Ethan? You're nothing like him." The hurt in Julian's eyes twisted into resentment. "Well, no matter how great he was, he's gone now, isn't he?" he muttered under his breath. "You're the one who pushed him away." Then he turned, stormed to his room, and slammed the door. Chloe's eyes widened, her hand crushing the file she was holding. He was right. If she hadn't driven me away, I never would have left. As Chloe came downstairs, there was still a coffee stain on her cuff. With no freshly pressed shirt waiting for her, she had to grab something old and wrinkled from the back of her closet. The old housekeeper stood quietly in the kitchen doorway, watching her. The family was finally paying the price for my absence. Chloe had her people searching for me, but for weeks they came up with nothing. Then one day, her assistant was sitting in a coffee shop when an arts program on TV caught her attention. As the camera panned over the studio audience, a familiar face flashed across the screen. The assistant shot up so fast she knocked over her coffee. She quickly snapped a picture of the screen with her phone. There I was, wearing a simple white shirt, taking notes like I was fully locked in. And sitting next to me was the celebrated designer, Maya Reed. Chloe stared at the photo on her assistant's phone, her face unreadable. "He's in San Francisco, working in design." The assistant hesitated. "Yes, and it appears he's become quite close with Ms. Reed." Chloe's fingers tightened around the phone. Why would he leave all this behind to struggle as a designer in another city? She just couldn't wrap her head around it. After a long silence, she gave an order. "Buy the newest professional design kit on the market and that set of handmade Italian brushes. Send them to him." If I wouldn't come home, she'd try to win me back. Remind me of what she could offer. That afternoon, a big, ridiculously expensive-looking package showed up at my apartment. I saw it when I got home from class and frowned. No clue what it was. I opened the card, saw the familiar name and return address, and immediately shut it. I handed the box back to the delivery man. "Return to sender." "But sir," he protested, "this is from Ms. Sterling herself." I cut him off, calm but firm. "We're divorced. Please tell her not to contact me again." That night, Chloe stood staring out her office window, her voice cold as ice. "He refused the delivery?" Her assistant kept his head down. Yes, Miss Sterling. He said you're divorced and that you shouldn't contact him. Chloe hurled the pen in her hand at the wall. It exploded, black ink splattering across the white paint like a nasty wound. The door opened softly. Julian walked in holding a cup of tea. Chloe, don't be upset. Here, have some tea. Chloe didn't even look at it. This doesn't concern you, she said flatly. Julian's smile flickered, but he pushed on. He set the cup down and sighed dramatically. Ethan is really something else, getting so close to another woman right after the divorce. He must have had this planned all along, don't you think? He looked at her, waiting for her to agree like she always did. But this time, Chloe stayed quiet. She remembered me waking up at dawn to iron her blouses. She remembered the exhaustion in my eyes as I waited up for her every single night. She remembered the patient way I smiled through Lily's worst tantrums. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. That's enough. Ethan isn't like that. Julian stared at her, eyes wide, nails digging into his palms. Late that night, Julian sat alone in his room, jealousy written all over his face as he stared at himself in the mirror. Why? He whispered, clutching his phone. After everything he'd done, he still couldn't compete with me. He scrolled to a photo he'd secretly taken of me and Maya laughing together in a coffee shop. A nasty idea started forming in his head. The next morning at breakfast, he, accidentally, dropped his phone right in front of Chloe. He scrambled to pick it up, making sure the screen stayed on, clearly showing the photo of me and Maya. Chloe's gaze locked onto it. In the photo, I was wearing a light blue sweatshirt she'd never seen before, smiling bright and carefree. Maya was sliding a cup of coffee toward me. Julian watched her carefully. Ethan seems to be doing so well. It's nice that he moved on so quickly. Chloe's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. I told you not to talk about him. The look in her eyes finally shut Julian up. But when he looked down at his plate, a tiny, satisfied smile played on his lips. That night, Chloe stood alone on the balcony, whiskey in her glass catching the cold moonlight. She suddenly remembered something I'd asked her right after we got married. Do you actually care about me? She'd turned away back then, annoyed, thinking I was just being needy. Now she realized she never had an answer. After all those years, she'd never really known me at all. A cold wind swept across the balcony. She downed the rest of her whiskey in one shot, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside her. The city glittered in the distance, but she knew one of those lights, the one that had always burned for her, was gone for good. With me gone, no one was taking Lily to and from school anymore. Chloe was always swamped with work, and Julian spent his days glued to video games, so the job fell to the driver. But lately, Lily refused to go to school. One afternoon, she stood outside her preschool, eyes red, face a mix of hurt and defiance. A group of kids pointed and laughed. Lily doesn't have a daddy, one of them mocked. My mommy says her daddy left her. Lily lunged at the boy, and the two started wrestling on the ground. You're a liar. A teacher rushed over and pulled them apart. For the first time ever, Chloe got a call from her daughter's school. She was in the middle of a board meeting when it came in. When she arrived and heard what happened, she was furious. She had her security team find out where the other boys' parents worked and got them both fired. But that didn't fix the real problem. I wasn't coming back. On the drive home, Lily was curled up in the back seat, her coat soaked with tears. Chloe watched her in the rearview mirror, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Lily looked up, her voice shaking. Mommy, can we go find Daddy? The woman behind the wheel said nothing. The next evening, outside the Design Institute in San Francisco, autumn leaves drifted down lazily. Chloe stood across the street holding Lily, watching as I walked out of the glass doors. I was wearing a black trench coat. Beside me, Maya looked up at me, saying something that made her eyes crinkle with a smile. And I smiled back. How long had it been since Chloe had seen me smile like that? Lily suddenly wriggled free and bolted across the street like a tiny cannonball, slamming right into me. I stumbled back and looked down at my daughter's tear-streaked face. She clung to my leg, burying her teary, snotty face in my jeans. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'll never say I hate you again. Please come home. Students walking by slowed down to stare. Maya quietly stepped back, giving us space. I slowly knelt down and gently wiped Lily's tears with my handkerchief, my voice calm and steady. Lily, Daddy has his own life now. You and Mommy need to take care of each other. As I said it, her face crumpled again. Chloe was suddenly standing right in front of us. Her eyes locked onto the faint tan line where my wedding ring used to be. She grabbed my wrist. Ethan, isn't this enough? She's just a child. How can you be so cruel? I won't accept this divorce. You're coming home with me. Maya frowned and smoothly stepped between us, her voice soft but firm. Ma'am, please respect his decision. Chloe's eyes were bloodshot. This is a private family matter. It has nothing to do with you. I gently guided Lily toward Maya and stepped in front of them both. I looked down at my ex-wife, my voice quiet, but my words hit her like a physical blow. Legally, we are no longer family. You seem to have forgotten, Miss Sterling. Do I need to remind you who demanded this divorce in the first place? She stared into my calm eyes and seemed to realize she was looking at a stranger. The man whose entire world had once revolved around her? Yeah, he was gone. Her voice came out as a raw whisper. A child needs her father. I bent down, straightened Lily's collar, and gently guided her back to her mother. Then I suggest you find her a new one, Miss Sterling. In the early hours of the morning, the living room of the Sterling mansion was littered with empty bottles. Chloe lay slumped on the sofa, staring at the divorce decree on the table. The alcohol burned her throat. As Chloe's absences from home grew longer, Julian's resentment toward me festered. He was stuck taking care of that brat Lily all day. And Chloe never answered his calls. He couldn't stand it. He hadn't worked this hard to get into the Sterling family just to be ignored. Nah, he had to do something. He had to get rid of me for good. Julian stood in the hallway of the Design Institute, watching me through the studio window. I was carefully packing up my entry for a major competition, a suit that blended traditional embroidery with a modern silhouette. The delicate stitching practically glowed under the lights. In 2 days, it would be on its way to the judges in Milan. Julian's nails dug into his palms. But he stared at my focused profile, venom in his eyes. I was just a pathetic, discarded husband. I didn't deserve any of this. At least, that's what he told himself. During the lunch break, when the studio was empty, he slipped inside. He accidentally bumped a work table, sending a jar of black paint spilling all over the suit. What do you think you're doing? A cool voice said from behind him. Julian spun around to see Maya standing there, her eyes like daggers. Startled, he dropped the jar, splashing the rest of the paint. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me get that, he stammered, grabbing a paper towel and deliberately rubbing the paint into the fabric, snagging and pulling the delicate embroidery. Seeing the cold look in Maya's eyes, he added nervously, "It was an accident." Maya grabbed his wrist, her voice dripping with contempt. She nodded toward the security camera in the corner. I'm sure the security footage will confirm that. Julian's face went white. In the dean's office, Julian sat pale as a ghost, forced to watch the security footage on a loop. It clearly showed him sneaking into the studio, deliberately spilling the paint, and then maliciously tearing at the embroidery with his fingernails. He started screaming hysterically. It's fake. You doctored the footage. Nathan, you set me up. The other students in the room began to whisper. I looked calmly at the man who had caused me so much pain. I never thought you'd sink this low, Julian. I'm out of your life just like you wanted. Why can't you just let it go? Feeling the scornful eyes of everyone in the room on him, Julian's face drained of all color. He jumped up and ran out of the room. Word of the incident quickly reached Chloe. Late that night, she sat in her office, watching footage from the security cameras she'd had installed in the house years ago to keep an eye on me. Now they were revealing a different, much crueler truth. She watched as Julian accidentally spilled soup, scalding my arm. She saw him let slip a detail about Lily's allergies that had resulted in me being blamed by her entire family. Chloe's hand began to tremble. All this time, his deception had run so deep. But what shocked her even more was what she discovered in some old financial records. The The Sterling Group's cash flow crisis 3 years ago, the one that had almost bankrupted them, had been averted when I secretly sold off the inheritance my parents had left me to cover the shortfall. And where had she been at the time? Abroad by Julian's side after he'd had a minor heart scare. Her fist slammed down on the desk, sending a pen clattering to the floor. Back at the mansion, Julian heard the front door open and rushed to greet her. "Chloe, you're finally home." Chloe's voice was glacial. "From now on, you will stay in the guest room. You are not to leave it." Julian froze. "What are you talking about?" Chloe threw a flash drive and a stack of papers onto the coffee table. "Do I need to play the security footage for you? Or perhaps we could discuss everything else you've been up to for the past few years." One glance at the papers on the table and all the color drained from Julian's face. "Chloe, you're still thinking about him, aren't you? You haven't even looked at me since he left." He started screaming, but Chloe remained perfectly still. She looked at the man she had once thought so kind and gentle and saw a complete stranger. She turned toward the stairs. "Security, confine him to the guest wing. He is not to leave without my permission." Julian's screams followed her up the stairs, but she tuned them out. In a desperate attempt to win me back, Chloe threw herself into her work, but she was unfocused and kept hitting roadblocks. Her long hours at the office gave Julian an opportunity. Already furious about being confined to his room, with Chloe gone he dropped all pretense of kindness. Whenever Lily cried or did something to annoy him, Julian would grab her arm, his nails digging into her soft skin. "What are you crying for?" he'd hiss, his face twisted with malice. "You think your precious daddy is coming back to save you? He abandoned you." Lily would bite her lip to keep from crying out, tears silently streaming down her face. Julian would sneer and grab her ear, giving it a sharp twist, just hard enough to make her shake with pain, but not hard enough to leave a visible bruise. "Go get my slippers," he'd command. He'd watch with sick satisfaction as she scurried away. When she returned, he'd accidentally knock over a glass of water. "You clumsy little fool. Clean that up." As Lily knelt on the floor, wiping up the spill with her sleeve, he would step on her hand, slowly grinding the heel of his shoe into her knuckles. His voice would be deceptively soft. "If you ever tell your mother about this, I will lock you in the basement." The room would fill with her terrified screams. Hearing the housekeeper approaching, he would instantly change his expression to one of concern. "Oh, Lily, did you fall? Let me help you up." The next day at preschool, Lily huddled in a corner, clutching a crayon. On the paper, she had drawn a picture of the two of us holding hands in a field of flowers. Her teacher asked gently, "Why are there only 2 people in your picture, sweetie?" Lily looked down and scribbled a violent red line across the paper. "Mommy's mean, and Uncle Julian is a bad man." Her voice broke. "I miss my daddy." The teacher sighed and gathered the little girl into her arms. That evening, as I was walking up to my apartment building, the sound of quiet sobbing made me stop. "Daddy." A small figure scrambled out from behind a bush. It was Lily. Her school uniform was filthy, and her knees were scraped and bleeding. She threw herself at me, hugging my legs and sobbing. "Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her teacher was standing behind her, looking apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes." She wouldn't stop crying, saying she had to see you, so I brought her here. I knelt down, and as she flinched away, I gently took her arm. Pushing up her sleeve, I saw a series of ugly, finger-shaped bruises on her pale skin. My voice went flat. "What is this?" Lily shook her head, sobbing. "Uncle Julian said if I told Mommy he hurt me, he'd lock me in the dark room." My expression hardened. The absolute nerve. My hatred for both of them deepened. Maya silently handed me a wet wipe, her own expression unreadable. Later at a diner, Lily devoured a plate of strawberry pancakes, a treat I used to make for her every weekend. "Slow down," I said, gently wiping a smudge of whipped cream from her chin. She looked up at me with so much hope in her eyes, and I had to shake my head. "Lily, Mommy and I are separated now. Things can't go back to the way they were. But I will always love you, and you can always come to me if you need anything. Okay?" Her heel came down on his hand, slowly pressing. Suddenly, pain shot through his scalp as a bodyguard grabbed his hair and dragged him to a wooden rack. Chains rattled as they locked his wrists above his head. Ethan was nothing but kind to you. Why did you do it? Chloe nodded. One guard pulled a red-hot iron from the coals and pressed it to Julian's collarbone. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. He thrashed, screaming as they branded him again and again. Skin blistering. Charring. Still he shouted, "It's not true. Ethan framed me." Chloe took a bottle of salt water and slowly poured it over the burns. "Is that so? Still not confessing?" She threw the rest in his face. "Cameras recorded everything. You wanted him to suffer. Now it's your turn." A guard picked up a large syringe. Julian stared at the cloudy liquid, trying to pull away. "No, please." The needle slid into his vein. Saline flowed in. He started choking, spitting saliva and flecks of blood. Hanging there, face soaked in tears and blood. Chloe wasn't done. She casually played with a small sharp knife, eyes icy. Terrified, he sagged, voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please." She smiled coldly and dragged the blade lightly across his cheek, leaving a thin red line. "You like pretending you're sick, don't you, Julian?" She looked down at him. "Well, this is your sickbed now. Get well soon." She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "Keep him here. As long as you don't kill him, you have my permission to do whatever you want." The iron door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed his screams. "Chloe, you'll pay for this." Upstairs, Chloe stood by the window holding a file. A full report of everything I had done for her and her family over 5 years. Selling my inheritance to save her company. Staying up all night with her sick parents. Always having hangover remedies and stomach medicine ready when she came home drunk. And what did she give me? Coldness. Neglect. Betrayal. While she ran around with Julian, I held everything together. The realization hit like a knife to the gut. As she walked up the stairs, she saw Lily standing in the doorway, clutching the teddy bear I had sewn years ago. "Mommy," Lily whispered, eyes red. "I miss Daddy. When are you bringing him home?" Chloe knelt and hugged her tight, throat closing up. Mommy misses him too. But she knew deep down some things just can't be fixed. Maya's lawyers wiped Julian's lies off the internet completely. With him gone, everything slowly calmed down. One evening, Maya surprised me with 2 concert tickets. Said I needed to chill for once. It was an outdoor concert on a warm summer night. The stage lights mixing with the stars, yeah, it felt unreal. My favorite band was playing, the lead singer's raw, soulful voice hitting me straight in the chest. I hummed along, tapping my fingers to the beat, feeling a kind of lightness I hadn't felt in years. It was crazy. Maya stood beside me watching me. When the encore started and fireworks exploded across the sky, she slipped her hand into mine. Her voice was soft, but her words? Crystal clear. "Ethan, I don't want to just be your friend." I turned to her. Her eyes, usually bright and full of laughter, were serious now. "Give me a chance, Ethan," she said. "Let me try." A flood of memories crashed over me. The loneliness of my deathbed in my last life. The heartbreak at the airport. All those days and nights of being taken for granted. My first instinct was to pull my hand away. Just run. But then I noticed her knuckles were white from how tight she was holding on. A cool breeze brushed through my hair. I looked into her hopeful eyes and thought, maybe it's time to stop being scared. Maybe it's time to try something new. I nodded slowly. "Let's try." Her eyes lit up brighter than the fireworks above us. She wrapped her arms around me in a gentle hug and whispered, "I'm going to show you what it feels like to be truly loved." 3 months later, I stood in front of my own design studio. My very own. I ran my hand over the new brass plaque on the door, and damn, it felt like a dream. In my last life, I'd been trapped in the Sterling mansion for 50 years. 50. In this one, I was finally standing on my own 2 feet. Maya threw her arms around me. "I've already made the contacts in Milan for our first show, but the creative direction? That's all you. Whatever you want to do." I looked at her. "Aren't you worried I'll screw it up?" She laughed and kissed my fingertips. What's there to worry about? If it all falls apart, I'll just sell my paintings and support you. Sunlight poured through the windows, and it hit me out of nowhere. I was actually happy. For real. At that same moment, in the CEO's office of the Sterling Group, there was a loud crash. Chloe's knuckles turned white as she gripped a photograph that had just been delivered. What did you just say? The photo showed me and Maya holding hands, smiling at each other at my studio's opening party. Her assistant repeated, his voice shaking. Mr. Hayes' studio opened today. Ms. Reed has apparently connected him with all of her overseas contacts. A water glass slammed into the window and shattered. Chloe's chest rose and fell rapidly. That suffocating feeling closed in again. But this time, she had no one to blame but herself. She had pushed me away. Pushed me straight into another woman's arms. Lily appeared in the doorway, clutching a picture book, her eyes wide at the broken glass. Mommy! Chloe swallowed her rage and reached for her daughter, but Lily flinched. The little girl tilted her head. Mommy, why are you so sad? Auntie Maya says Daddy has a beautiful smile, and she makes him smile every day. Lily started counting on her fingers. Auntie Maya is so nice to Daddy. She peels his shrimp for him, and she remembers he doesn't like cilantro, and she knows all the words to his favorite songs. She paused. Mommy, what's wrong? Chloe touched her cheek and realized it was wet with tears. She turned away quickly. Each tiny detail was like a small blade, cutting deeper and deeper. After 10 years of marriage, she had never known I was allergic to shellfish. Or that I hated cilantro. Or even what my favorite song was. Late that night, Chloe sat beside Lily's bed, listening to her chatter excitedly about her time with me. Last week, Auntie Maya took us on a picnic, and Daddy made the best cookies. Lily rolled over and hugged her bear. Mommy, why did we never go on picnics? Chloe had no answer. She remembered when I had once carefully suggested a family vacation, and she brushed me off, saying she was too busy. Later, she found out I had spent 3 months planning that trip, down to packing Lily's allergy medication. She gently patted her daughter's back and hummed a lullaby. Go to sleep now. Outside, the moonlight was pale and cold, just like her heart. Scrolling through my social media, she watched me become more successful, more confident. The guilt was crushing. She wanted to tell me she understood now. That she had gotten rid of Julian. Every day, she started waiting outside my apartment building, hoping for a chance to talk. The rain poured down, soaking the city. Chloe stood outside my building, completely drenched. Her expensive suit was ruined, her hair plastered to her forehead. She had been there for a week straight, from dawn to after midnight, just hoping to see me. Ethan, she whispered. When she saw me walk out, she rushed forward. I'm sorry, Ethan. Please come back. I opened my umbrella and walked right past her. Didn't even turn my head. Rain dripped from the edge of my umbrella. I didn't look at her. We're done, Miss Sterling, I said calmly. She reached for me, but grabbed nothing but air. The next day, Chloe sold the mansion and moved into a high-rise across from mine. Every morning, she stood at her window and watched Maya wait for me downstairs. We'd leave together. She'd watch us laugh on the way to my studio. In the evenings, she'd see us come home with groceries, sometimes flowers. She became a pathetic voyeur, using binoculars to watch me cook dinner while Maya sat on the sofa looking at my sketches, sometimes leaning over to kiss my cheek. All the warmth that had once been hers now belonged to someone else. At night, she sat alone flipping through old photo albums. In every picture, I was there in the background, smiling patiently. But her eyes had always been on someone else. She couldn't even remember my favorite color. I'm so sorry, Ethan, she whispered, falling asleep clutching my photo. Desperate, she waited outside again all night in the rain. Ethan, if you won't see me, I'll wait here until you do, she called. By morning, a security guard found her collapsed in the flower bed, burning with fever. At the hospital, when she woke up, her first words were, "Is Ethan here?" The assistant looked uneasy. Mr. Hayes had his assistant drop this off. A small note. 3 cold words. Get well soon. Chloe laughed, a broken, hollow sound. I didn't even hate her enough to care. After she recovered, She stood on the hospital roof staring toward my apartment. She remembered the nights I had waited up for her. The pressed blouses. The porridge when her stomach hurt. And all she had given me was coldness, neglect, betrayal. She called her lawyer. That property transfer agreement we drafted. Add a clause. I'm transferring all my shares in the Sterling Group to Lily's name, with Ethan Hayes as the sole trustee. Then she walked away. She showed up at my studio holding a thick portfolio, stock transfers, property deeds, even an inventory of her watch collection. Her entire fortune. I'll give you everything, she rasped. The company, the houses, all of it. I'll sign over every asset. Just please, come back. I looked at the cashier's check on top. The number was insane. Enough to buy the whole building. I let out a dry laugh and tore the check in two. This was never what I wanted. The pieces fell like pale confetti. She grabbed my wrist. Then what do you want? I'll change. I love you, Ethan. Please. I pulled free. I wanted respect. I wanted trust. I wanted back the decade you spent looking right through me. You can't give me that, Chloe. And even if you could, it's too late. That night, she confronted Maya in a country club VIP lounge and threw whiskey in her face. Leave, Ethan, she snapped. Name your price. 50 million. 100. You want a partnership with the Sterling Group? It's yours. Maya calmly wiped her face. Then, in one swift move, she punched Chloe, sending her onto the leather sofa. That was for Ethan, she said, her voice low and sharp. After everything you put him through, what makes you think you have the right to ask for anything? Chloe wiped blood from her lip. You think you've won? The history we have, the years we were married, you can't compete with that. He's just confused. Maya's eyes turned to steel. Real love isn't about possession. It's about respect. And that's something you will never understand. Chloe went silent. She finally realized something. This calm, composed woman? When it came to me, she was fierce. And after that, Chloe found herself drawn to my studio every single day. She would stand in the shadows of the hallway, like some low-key voyeur, watching my new life through those glass walls. Inside, she'd see me and Maya, our heads bent together over a design. I'd point to a swatch of fabric, and Maya would instantly hand me the perfect color card, no hesitation. If I frowned in concentration, she'd quietly swap my coffee for the jasmine tea I preferred. As I took the cup, my hair would brush her chin, and we'd share a small, intimate smile that seriously stung Chloe's eyes. She would remember all the lunches I'd packed for her that she'd just tossed away. The research I'd compiled that she'd used as a coaster, like it was nothing. The design ideas I'd shyly offered that she'd brushed off with a curt, "What would a stay-at-home dad know about business?" It wasn't that I was uninteresting. It was that she had never even bothered to really look. My assistant's voice snapped her back to reality. "Miss Sterling, Mr. Hayes has asked that you please not loiter outside the studio." The words hit her like a punch. She, who had once been my entire world, was now just an unwanted visitor being told to leave. Brutal. "Chloe," a voice said from behind her. She spun around and found me standing there in the hallway. Sunlight streamed through my white shirt, catching the glint of a new ring on my finger. My voice was calm, almost too calm, like we were just talking about the weather. "It's over. Let it go." Those words? Final. Fatal. Straight to the heart. She slowly sank to the floor, sobbing like a child for the first time in years. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry." I watched her for a moment in silence, then turned and walked back to my studio. Just as I opened the door, I heard her cry out, her voice raw with pain. "But I really do love you now." My hand paused on the doorknob for half a second, but I didn't turn around. Our timing was off by a whole lifetime. And that was that. A week later, Maya started planning her proposal. Yeah, she was that bold. She secretly contacted my favorite planetarium and arranged to borrow their star projector. On the day she planned to propose, she sent all our employees home early and turned the sample room where I spent most of my time into a literal mini-cosmos. "Can you come to the sample room?" she texted me in the middle of a meeting. When I opened the door, the room was dark. The Milky Way flowed across the floor at my feet, and Orion glittered on the walls. Maya stood in the center, surrounded by projected images of every design I had ever created. I was completely speechless. What is all this? Maya pulled a small velvet box from her pocket. As she opened it, the projected starlight seemed to gather around the ring inside, making the diamond glow with a soft blue light. Her voice trembled just a little. You once told me that diamonds symbolize new beginnings. The design for this ring was inspired by your award-winning collection. I recognized it instantly. It was a tiny, intricate detail from my original sketches that the judges had made me remove. She took my hand. I secretly commissioned a jeweler in Italy. Took him 3 months to get it right. Every day with you, you show me a more beautiful world. Ethan Hayes, will you marry me? Before she even finished, I pulled her into a hug, nodding like crazy, half terrified this was all some dream. She carefully slid the ring onto my finger, then pulled out a matching one. Now you do mine. On our wedding day, the small chapel was filled with my favorite flowers. Maya had hired a string quartet to play the piece of music I'd once written about in an old journal, the music I'd always dreamed of for my wedding. Lily, in a custom-made dress, was my best man. Her palms were sweaty as she clutched my hand. Daddy, she whispered, I practiced for a whole month. I promise I won't step on Auntie Ma's dress. When the music started, I walked down the aisle with my daughter on my arm. My suit, designed by Maya, had a subtle pattern of stars embroidered on the cuffs, a nod to the night she proposed. At the altar, Lily pulled a small folded paper from her pocket and read seriously, On behalf of my mom, I give my daddy to Auntie Maya. She paused, then added, And Mommy says, this time you have to make him happy. Maya knelt down to Lily's level. I promise I will make your daddy very, very happy. In front of all our friends and family, we exchanged vows, sealed them with a kiss, and said, I do. At the reception, Chloe sat alone at a table in the far corner. She hadn't touched her wine. A sharp pain in her stomach made sweat bead on her forehead. As Maya and I shared our first dance, she watched how gently Maya held my hand, like I was something precious and fragile. It reminded her of our own wedding night, how she'd gone to bed without even looking at me. Miss Sterling, would you like some cake? A waiter asked. She shook her head, just as she saw me walking toward her table. I stood in front of her. Thank you for coming. Chloe opened her mouth to speak but was hit by a violent coughing fit. She covered her mouth with a handkerchief, but not before I saw a fleck of blood. My expression changed. I instinctively started to reach for her, but Maya stepped beside me and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Should we call a doctor? She asked Chloe, her voice genuinely concerned. Chloe shook her head and somehow stood up. I wish you both happiness. As she turned to leave, she heard me say quietly, Take care of yourself. Those 3 words cut deeper than anything else. In the parking lot, she collapsed against her steering wheel and finally let herself sob. In her rearview mirror, the warm light from the church's stained glass windows glowed, a place she could never enter again. 3 years later, my design studio had become one of the top couture houses in the country. Maya and I ran it together. Our life was full, happy, solid. Morning sunlight streamed into our apartment. I stood in our walk-in closet, fingers brushing across rows of suits, all perfectly organized by color. Maya designed all my clothes now, each tagged for the right occasion. She came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Meeting with the French buyers today, she murmured, holding up 2 perfectly coordinated outfits. This was the kind of care I had once given someone else. Now, finally, someone was giving it to me. Funny how life flips like that. In front of the Sterling Group headquarters, bankruptcy notices fluttered in the wind. The company, once a titan, had collapsed due to mismanagement. Watching her empire fall, Chloe had nothing left to say. She crouched on the curb across the street, an unlit cigarette in her hand. Her expensive dress was frayed at the hem. The pain from late-stage stomach cancer forced her into a permanent hunch. Her doctor had warned her that her lungs couldn't handle smoke. Her phone lit up with a final notification. All accounts have been frozen. She looked up. Across the street, on a luxury department store, a massive billboard showed an ad for my latest collection, Me in one of my own designs. Once, that brilliant, successful man had been her husband. The guy who pressed her dresses and made her soup. Now I was worlds away, and I never gave her a second thought. It was what she deserved. Across town, in a cheap, run-down apartment, Julian stared at his reflection, a manic grin on his face. Taped to the mirror were magazine clippings of me accepting awards, smiling for cameras. He smashed the mirror with his fist. That bastard! The online scandal had wrecked his reputation. He was a total outcast in his field. Then his doorbell rang. His landlord stood there with 2 police officers. "Mr. Vance, we need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding allegations of defamation and harassment." He tried to slam the door, but an officer blocked it. He backed away, panicking. "Stay away from me." On the TV, a news anchor reported, famed designer Ethan Hayes today announced the formation of a new foundation to provide scholarships for underprivileged design students. Julian started laughing, but unhinged. It slowly turned into a sob. He finally got it. Karma had caught up with him. The setting sun turned the ocean in the Maldives into fire. Maya leaned her head on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly, running her fingers through my hair, her wedding band catching the last light. I stared at the horizon and for a second saw my past self dying alone in that hospital bed. I remembered the family photo at the airport. The way my hand had shaken signing the divorce papers. This life, I had finally learned to live it for myself. I pulled my wife into a hug. "Nothing." Maya kissed my cheek. "You deserve every good thing in this world, Ethan Hayes." When we returned home, an anonymous package waited at my studio. Inside was a rare out-of-print collection of design books and a beautifully bound scrapbook. The first page held a photo of me at 20. The following pages were filled with clippings of every public appearance I'd made, award ceremonies, interviews, even candid paparazzi shots. Each one carefully dated, some with small handwritten notes in the margins. "This haircut really suits him. He looks tired here." The last pages were empty except for a single sticky note on the final page. "The rest of these pages are for you and her to fill. I'm sorry I failed you." No signature. But we both knew who sent it. Maya took my hand. "Do you want to call her?" I shook my head and placed the scrapbook on the highest shelf of my bookcase. Some stories are better left finished. Maya looked at me, her eyes filled with something deep and endless.